Welcome on in to another episode of Nate at the Foul Pole. And today we're going to be talking about the new 60-game season that was implemented by Rob Manfred and the Orioles and DFAs. Matt, how you doing?
Yeah, can't wait to talk about it. Baseball is back. The three magic words.
Yeah, baseball's back. I almost titled the episode that, but I feel like everyone's going to. So I changed it to 60-game madness because that's really what this is. 60-game madness. I'm excited. I know you are excited. Baseball's finally back.
I am excited to see how they're going to navigate this whole season. I mean, there's a lot of weird rule changes going to be implemented. Playoffs may or may not be expanded. It's just, we got a lot to talk about, Zach.
Yeah, I mean, the rule changes are certainly probably the most polarizing part of the season so far. Obviously the universal DH is something we'll get into a little bit. And there's so many health and protocols that are just ridiculous across this, 60-game season. So it's going to be really interesting how they get around this. And, we'll see how the other sports do as well. I know MLS is starting up pretty soon. So I think that will, show MLB a little bit more about how, they can navigate this situation.
What was your first reaction to the news, Zach?
I was pretty hyped up. I'm a huge baseball fan. A lot of people wanted the baseball season to be canceled, and I know they still do. I was all in favor of it as much as we can get. 40 games, 50 games, 60. I didn't care what it would be. I really wanted 82. That was my original, goal at the beginning of the season, was to get 82 out of this year. But we got 60. I think we should take 60 and be happy with it, because if we look back at these months of negotiations and, bad will in between the PA and the MLB, I think we're lucky to have anything at all. I mean, that's just, it's such a bad situation for baseball. So we're lucky to have 60 games.
Yeah, 60 games. I mean, it's going to be a sprint to the finish. You're going to see teams that maybe necessarily wouldn't have made the playoffs if it was a full season. I feel like the Seattle Mariners are a team that starts out hot every year. You might see a player hit 400 this year, just based on the small sample size, and some of those counting stats won't be high, but the average stats might be. And that'll be interesting to see. Do we think that the Orioles are a playoff contender?
No, but anything can happen. It's a sprint. If we get hot for a week or 2 weeks, it's possible. I mean, I can't rule anything out. I think this offense is a potentially really dangerous offense. I think there's guys like Ryan Mountcastle and Austin Hayes who are going to provide big, big numbers. And, Renato Nunez, if he hits as many home runs as we expect him to, even without Trey Mancini, this is a dangerous offense. If the pitching is right for a couple games, John Means gives us 5 wins. Woj gives us 1. We get Aiken maybe up here and gives us 3 or 4 wins. You're looking at maybe, the team getting hot for a little bit. I don't think we're a playoff team, but I do think we might end up being better than a lot of people think. I know Paul Valley the other day was talking about all the, ways that possibly the Orioles could, have a record against the Yankees or something like that. We played them 10 times. I think it's possible we could even go, win 3 games against the Yankees, go 3-7. It's possible. I just really wouldn't rule anything out at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really 100% on board with the offense, just because you lost Trey Mancini and Jonathan VR, and those are 2 enormous losses to what the production that we saw from last year. But yeah, I think it hinges a lot on these rookies and these second-year guys like Mountcastle, like Austin Hayes. Obviously, you hope some guys can improve, but you're also banking on like Hanser Alberto to produce somewhat similar numbers. So it'll be interesting. I think, you're going to see some new pitchers. I think you might see Dean Kramer. You might see some of these AAA guys get their shot, especially, however this taxi squad roster is going to be, made up or comprised. It'll be interesting. And you never know. Adley Rutschman, he could make his debut.
We've been talking a lot, in between a few of us about, including you, Matt, obviously, about Adley Rutschman possibly being in the big leagues. I want to get your thoughts on that, but I personally don't see it.
I don't think they would do that. I think Elias is too smart for that, especially if there's any potential risk of him getting service time this early. And I don't think that'll be in the cards if they, between now and July 24th, say if you're in a taxi squad first, no matter what, and you make it up to the big leagues, you will not receive any service time. Maybe it's a possibility. I think, the guarantee that there's going to be one catcher on the taxi squad improves his chances. I don't think it's going to happen, but it would definitely be a must watch if he's, making his debut sometime in the late summer.
With this one, my heart and my brain are in two different places. I would be ecstatic for Adley Rutschman to make his MLB debut this year, but my brain tells me that obviously this is a terrible idea. We don't want to waste this service time. I think it's a great idea to have him on the taxi squad. We'll cover that next week with all the guys who are going to be on that squad and on the Major League roster. But I do think it is a good idea for him and even a guy like Kerstad be on the taxi squad and work out with Major League players and learn from them. But I don't think we should activate Adley Rutschman this year. I don't think we should activate DL Hall or any of these other top prospects that we have that are pretty close to the majors. So that's my feeling on it. And I don't think the Orioles will. They know they're too smart for that. The Orioles really know how to manipulate service time. They kept Austin Hayes 2 at-bats under rookie eligibility last year. So that's just, it's fantastic the way they've handled that so far.
Yeah, it looks like we have a question in from Forrest Matthews. He says, how do games this year count against service time? Would, having Mountcastle up for all 60 games burn a full year of eligibility? To my knowledge, it would. Maybe you can correct me on that, Zach, but I think part of the clause and part of the agreement was that the players would receive their service time, so it doesn't, hinder them in free agency.
Yeah, and that's the case. Mountcastle would receive a full year. It's kind of unfortunate for us, really, and it's unfortunate for a lot of teams who have these veterans like Mookie Betts on a 1-year deal right now, like the Dodgers, and it hurts a lot of people, but it hurts us especially because we're losing a year of Mountcastle on only 60 games. But the other part of this story is that if you're on the taxi squad, which we expect a lot of Orioles prospects to be, you do not receive service time unless you're activated to the 30 or 28 or 26 man roster at any point in the year.
So another piece of this puzzle is that the National League will have the designated hitter for the first time in its history. How do we feel about that? Universal DH.
Well, we really could have a debate all day about the DH. It's good and bad in multiple ways. I mean, there's so many pros and cons with it. It's really not the most pure form of the game, and I know a lot of people argue against that. It's not what we've played, since ever. I mean, baseball was created without it. It's not like a DH has been around forever. So it's not very pure, and it's a good thing for baseball though. And it is a really good thing because it's a revenue driver. It puts fans in the seats. People love home runs. Home runs brought baseball back in the 90s. The DH is what's going to, help that become, MLB get more revenue. So it's going to help MLB become bigger and market to younger fans. I'm personally in favor of both leagues being and playing the same way. I just don't think that it's feasible to have 2 leagues playing different ways as we had for the past 30 years.
I, since the beginning, being a baseball fan, have been 100% on board for a universal DH. I think it creates another 15 jobs that wouldn't have been there. I know, you still have the same roster size, but a guy like a David Ortiz, would he have been an everyday player? I mean, maybe he would have been able to figure it out at first base. But I look at a guy like Kyle Schwarber with the Cubs. He's definitely not he doesn't bring any defensive value to the table. I think he's an American League only player. And, this has been a debate. I've talked to National League fans that are totally against it. And American League friends are all for it because they see the value that it brings to the game. I think one thing that you do miss with the DH is you miss some strategy. I think, having like double switches and kind of reshifting your lineup construction. I think that brings some strategy to the game. It's more interesting, but I think marketing the game overall, it's better to have a DH and bring that power aspect to your lineup.
Like you said, and you said it perfectly about guys getting jobs that wouldn't have otherwise had jobs. I mean, there's so many guys who can go through history and find the past 30 years,
Mhm.
so many guys who have really burnt out at a defensive position, like a Hanley Ramirez or a Manny Ramirez or a David Ortiz, like you said, who have burnt out at a defensive position and end up becoming a full DH. And it works so well for a lot of those guys. I mean, they just become, absolute cogs in the middle of the lineup. They hit 40 home runs a year and they don't have to bring their team down defensively. So the DH, it helps a lot of guys. Doesn't help the pitchers, I can tell you that, because
Mhm.
they give up more home runs. Their numbers get a little bit inflated. I'm sure we'll see
Mhm.
that in the National League. Some pitchers will have inflated numbers. You look at a guy like Clayton Kershaw, who's never faced much DHs in his career. We'll see how his numbers go up a little bit, or Scherzer, whoever you may talk about here.
I'm just thinking, like, what if you put a DH in Coors Field?
Oh man, that's gonna be that's gonna be good.
Yeah.
We were hoping the Rockies would take Blaze Jordan and see some absolute
Oh,
moonshots there
Zach Veen
out of
and
the
Blaze
draft.
Jordan.
Oh, that would have been just a moonshot squad.
Yeah.
But they've got guys like Charlie Blackmon and Arenado who are just gonna be able to crush balls. They already do, but it just opens up another spot for someone else to crush balls in that stadium.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this is going to be kind of the way of things moving forward. And then one other piece we definitely have to talk about with this restart are some of the restrictions, some of the health procedures that will take place. If you bear with me one moment, I will share my screen. But what do you think about those so far, Zach?
Well, they're needed. Obviously, these are completely necessary, and obviously the MLB needs to keep the players as safe as possible. That's obvious. We'll see how much of this actually works. Sitting 6 feet apart in the stands is kind of odd. As we're looking at that right now, I just think that's kind of odd. I don't really see how that's going to help much. I mean, if they're all wearing masks, it'll be fine anyway. The tests every other day is great. The temperature is not really something that's going to give away COVID too often, but I do like this. I really do think they've put some really necessary measures in place. I like what the NBA is doing better with the rings on the players that kind of check symptoms all the time. I really like that. So maybe
Mm-hmm.
that's something MLB can implement. But this is all necessary, so I'm glad they're doing it.
Yeah, I think it's important for the leagues to share ideas. I think that's how you get the best ideas. It's it's going to be interesting if there's a cluster with a team, and say you just pick a team like the Yankees. You have a beginning of September, say there's a cluster and there's 10 players out. You got Aaron Judge out, you got Giancarlo Stanton, you got Garrett Cole all out. You're basically putting a AAA roster in the playoffs, and I don't think that'll make too many Yankees fans happy. Obviously, we do not want that to happen, but it's just a reality and a possibility.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who sits out, really, because there's so much impact that a player sitting out could have. And Justin's talking about dominoes. That is a dominoes-like graphic. MLB just completely copied them there. But there's so much impact that a player sitting out. I mean, you look at Garrett Cole for the Yankees. I think he's a guy who's spoken up possibly about sitting out. If he sits out, that changes the landscape for AL East and the NL East completely. I mean, it just changes everything. So we'll see how, who decides to sit out. I think we'll know pretty soon. And that will also affect fantasy leagues big time.
Yeah, speaking of fantasy leagues, we just started one up, so that'll be that should be fun to monitor throughout the summer. Anything else regarding the restart with baseball, Zach, before we move on to our next topic?
No, but I want to get a prediction from you. Do you think that MLB will make all 60 games and then the postseason? Do you think everything will happen as planned?
If I'm being honest, I don't think they will. And I'm not trying to be like pessimistic. I just don't. I'm seeing like the numbers in Texas. I'm seeing the numbers in Florida, and I'm seeing we got the Rangers, we got the Astros in Texas, we got the Marlins, we got the Rays in Florida. So, the Blue Jays might have to play in Buffalo for all we know. It's just going to be there's going to be a lot of hurdles to overcome, and if they do, I applaud them. I don't have a whole lot of faith, and that doesn't just go for baseball; it goes for all sports. But at this moment in time, I would say no. Not trying to be pessimistic, but that's kind of how I feel.
There's a few more things I have on this actually. one of them is that the NBA tested all 302 players that will be in Orlando in their bubble, and only 16 tested positive, which I think is overall great news for not only MLB, but all sports. I mean, that is great news. That's 0.05%. That's not even, 1/100th of the players that are there. It is. Are you doing the math in your head right now, Matt? Is it 5%?
Yeah, I thought
something
it was
like
5.
that. It's something like that.
Close enough.
I don't have the math, but it's pretty low.
Yeah.
And I think that MLB will probably have about 100 out of the 1,800 test positive, something around that. So 5%, like you said. So that's good news for all sports. I think you're looking at MLS being they're kind of paving the way for everyone else because they're coming back soonest. They're going to have that tournament soon. So I think the way the MLS handles will kind of show everyone else how they should handle theirs and the positive tests.
True. And, give us your thoughts in the comment section. What do you guys think about the restart? Are you excited? Not as excited? What do you think maybe like an over-under win total for the Orioles could be? Could be 15 games, could be 20 games. You never know.
Yeah, Matt, I want to touch on one more thing too.
Sure.
Some owners have expressed interest about having fans in the seats at about 20%, 25% capacity. Do you think that's possible? Do you think it could happen with the Orioles?
I hope it doesn't. I don't think there's any reason to put fans at risk, undue risk. Just my opinion. I think it's better off just playing with nobody in the stadium, and they get their revenue from TV deals anyway. So. Yeah,
that's my thoughts too. I know it's really Texas pushing that with the Astros and the Rangers,
which is insane. Why is the state with the most cases pushing it? I don't get that.
I don't know. It's not really that smart. I know Rock Kubaco was on his podcast with Steve Molesky, and they mentioned that they've heard both nothing about the Orioles doing this. So it doesn't look like we will have fans in the stands, but maybe in Texas they'll be crazy and do that. Who knows? I mean, Texas is pretty unpredictable.
We'll see. Continue to get us your thoughts in the comment section, but we did want to move on to a discussion about the non-drafted free agents from the Orioles. And I did want to put a little disclaimer. These are not official yet. These are just basically rumblings from beat reporters and other sources and insiders, but they have not been announced fully by the team yet. So,
yeah, these are, unofficial, and maybe have a few of these guys on the podcast soon, and we're looking at that right now. Yeah, and let's start it off with the right-handed pitcher at Auburn, Ryan Watson. Kind of give your scouting report on him, and let's look at some of his video right here.
Yeah, I'm not as big on Ryan Watson, but he did play in the SEC. Right-handed pitcher. He is a reliever. If you watch this wind-up here, he reminds you a heck of a lot of Jason Grilli with the way he celebrates. Didn't have, great stats over a 4-year career at Auburn, an ERA above 5. He was outside of the MLB Pipeline's top 200. But the one positive I do have on him is he looks to hide the ball really well. It's sometimes it's hard for hitters to pick it up out of his hand, so I think that's a plus moving forward.
Yeah, I wasn't too big on him either. His slider looks like an okay pitch, but not really too excited about him, to be honest with you. He did have a lot of strikeouts, which is always exciting in a pitcher. He had 7.8 Ks per 9 over his career, so that's pretty solid. But this is not a guy who really excited me too much. I think he'll probably start off in the Gulf Coast League. I guess I could see him there. I don't even know if he could really compete at Aberdeen at this point. But you look at the fastball and you look at the slider, and maybe we see some upside here, but I don't really see a ton.
Do have one question coming in from Justin. It says, what's the difference between undrafted free agents and non-drafted free agents? I think it just has to deal with the nomenclature, if you will, the naming, how the MLB names it. I don't think there's necessarily a difference, but it's just kind of in baseball, it's always NDFA. So
there's definitely no difference. But they, Baseball America refers to them as UDFAs, and everyone else refers to them as NDFAs. So we're going to call them NDFAs. I think that is the proper term. So
semantics.
Yeah, for sure. Let's move on to J.D. Mundy, a first baseman from Radford. What were your thoughts on him?
I'm a big fan of this kid. He transferred from Virginia Tech to Radford, which is a smaller school, so he's probably not facing as high-level competition as he was at Virginia Tech. But he's a lefty bat, and as you can see in the video here, he has power to all fields. He slaps the ball really well. And, in 2019, he had 1,000 OPS. In 2020 limited sample size, he had a OPS of over 1,100. So I think this is a guy with a lot of potential. Interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I like the left-handed swing. It looks really nice. It's pretty smooth. Looks like someone who could really put up a lot of home runs per year. He looks like someone who could really, turn into a really good power hitter from the left side. I don't really think this is a guy who fits the Orioles profile, so I was kind of confused on why they took him.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, there might be some upside here. You like the defense, but I think it's pretty nice at first base. A 982 fielding percentage. There's not really too much advanced stats. That's all we have to go off of from college. But the power bat looks like it could be a high upside bat. It doesn't really fit, like I said, the Orioles motto of kind of going up the middle and with the defense guys. But this is an interesting pickup for sure.
Yeah, next guy we have here to talk about is Brandon Young from the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. He's a 6'6" starter. As you can see here, he's a big kid. Transferred from junior college. He has a really high K per 9 rate and a limited sample size in 2020. But, I like him a lot. I think he has a lot to offer, especially with the strikeouts. He does have a tendency to give up, his fair share of walks, but he looks like he has really good stuff. And I think the Orioles have something to work with here.
This was my favorite pick, actually, out of all the NDFAs. I really do like him. Everything you said is spot on. I like his delivery a lot. He's kind of a big guy, and it's just an easy delivery. Kind of almost reminded me of Luis Ortiz with the Orioles. Kind of just that big guy who has a really simple delivery. It's nice. I really like his power fastball. I think that's going to play pretty well. Hits up to 95. I really like the slider. It's in mid 80s slider, which is really nice. This was definitely my favorite guy. I know a lot of people had said this could possibly have been a 5th round pick. So I was really excited to get him. I think there's a lot of upside. I think he'll play, easily at Aberdeen. I think he'll do really well. Brandon Young is definitely a really exciting pitcher.
Do you see him, at that height with that arm, do you see him being profiling more as a starter or as a reliever?
I think it's too early to say. Probably a reliever. I think that, it's just starters are kind of a dime a dozen.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't really find guys that aren't even drafted that come out of college as one of your 5 in your rotation. It just doesn't happen too often. So I could definitely see him being an impact reliever out of the bullpen for sure.
Next guy we have to talk about is Thomas Gerard from Duke, same school that Marcus Stroman went to. And yep. I'm actually a really big fan of this pick. I think he has a really, really plus slider, as you can see in this video here. Really hard to pick up out of his hand. He's just a little bit of a smaller guy. He's under 6 feet. And he was a high school teammate of Hudson Haskin. So hopefully they get to reunite in the Orioles minor league system.
Yeah, this was kind of middle ground for me as far as how much I like this pick. He's a closer, which is kind of exciting to get, a guy who really has the experience of pitching in tough situations. That's always good. I don't really like his delivery all that much. It's kind of jerky. It needs to be simplified a little bit. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but like you said, that slider can be, it breaks away pretty nicely. I don't really love any of his other pitches. I think his plus pitch is a slider. It's another one that I'm kind of confused about with profile wise. I'm not really sure why the Orioles targeted him. Maybe they just thought he was, best player available, but they usually don't take guys who are closers. But it's a pretty nice profile. I'm not a massive fan. It's kind of middle ground for me.
Okay, next guy we want to talk about is a personal favorite of mine, T.T. Bowens, coming out of Central Connecticut State. Kind of a small school, but as you can see here, that he is playing Arkansas, so going up against good competition, and hits an absolute mammoth bomb down there in Fayetteville. I have, that he's pretty athletic. He's got a physical frame, not crazy consistent power, but he does have a lot of raw power. And I think if he can get it come into his own with the power, he could be a really good player. I do see him moving a little bit around the infield, though. I don't really know if he's going to stick at first base.
Yeah, his 2020 numbers are pretty uninspiring, and that may
Hmm.
be why he didn't get drafted or a
Yep.
contributing factor. His 2019 numbers though were really good. He outperformed basically the rest of the team. And I like what you say about the raw power because this is a big guy. I mean, this is a guy who can
Hmm.
really look like he's going to hit home runs at the minor league level. So, maybe tapping into that power, finding a little bit more of his swing and his stroke, maybe helps him out a little bit. This is another one I'm really high on. I think this is a really good pick. He can play a little bit of left field, like you said, very athletic. I think he profiles definitely more as a really above average athletically first baseman. I thought his stance kind of reminded me of Jeff Bagwell a little bit, the way
Hmm.
his swing and stance. So the big power and the big guy kind of it's exciting. It's like a more right-handed JD Mundy. It's kind of the same profile a little bit, but I
Sure.
do like this pick a lot more than Mundy.
Sure. Next guy we want to talk about is probably my favorite from this entire draft, and that would be Isaiah Occurrence from University of Pitt Johnstown, transfer from University of West Virginia. This guy's a two-way player. He's both a right-handed pitcher and an outfielder. What I have on him, he does have really good pitching numbers, but that's against weaker competition, so take that for what you will. But he did have that 1,200 OPS there this year, and he has that exaggerated load that I think is where he gets most of his power in his batting stance.
Yeah, this is a really exciting pick for me too. I was looking at his numbers. Obviously, these are D2 numbers, but they're very good both offensively and on the mound. Pretty good numbers. So I don't really know where he'll stick. I'm not really sure yet. It's too early to say. We're gonna have to see him play in Aberdeen maybe to get a better idea. But I do like him more as a hitter. I just think he's got a little bit of raw power. He's not that big of a guy, so it's kind of surprising. But he had a fantastic 2020, hit over 400. And he walks more than he strikes out, which is another great thing that I always look for in hitters. This is a really nice pick. I mean, it's a transfer to Pitt Johnstown, so not really sure much about that school's track record in producing great prospects, but I really do like this guy.
No, I mean, Pitt Johnstown's a really small school. I know
Yeah.
a lot of people from my high school went there, but definitely not known for athletics. But it's exciting. I mean, the Orioles have had a little bit of a past with two-way players to an extent. Michael Givens, he was drafted as a shortstop. Dario Alvarez was an outfielder who they try to convert to a pitcher. So they have a little bit of a history with that. They don't have a history with Mike Elias, but it could be, if he is a two-way player, that could be a pretty cool little pickup for a non-drafted guy.
Yeah, the Orioles have shown me kind of over the years, they have a pretty great ability to take a guy and really just change his position and make him really good at another position. I mean, you look at Michael Givens, like you said, going from a shortstop to a relief pitcher. That's, a really hard change. I mean, he obviously wasn't hitting the ball that well, so it was a warranted change, but it's a hard change. And you look at Trey Mancini going from first base to left field and now playing right field. He's made the switch. Adam Jones was originally a shortstop when he was drafted, and he's became an all-star Gold Glove center fielder. Chance Sisco was drafted as a shortstop. You look all through these guys, and you really see how the Orioles have kind of made them great at their defensive positions. I think that's something the Orioles have been very good at with Dan Duquette. We'll see how Mike Elias handles that as well.
And the last guy we want to talk about is Dylan Harris from University of North Carolina. What I have for him, he's a little bit of a smaller guy, 5'9", but he's got big power. He's got speed. And the thing is with him, he's already 23, so he's a little older and a little bit more advanced. So to me, he might be one of these guys that's, what you see is what you get. I don't know if there's going to be like crazy amount of development left. And I think, if I'm not wrong, Zach, I think we both share the same player comp for Dylan Harris.
We did. Yeah, Cedric Mullins. It's an easy comp to see, I think. You look at just the excellent speed. That's the first thing I noticed when I saw this guy. I was like, wow, this is some of the best speed I've ever seen on a prospect. I mean, he just flies. And like Justin's saying, he does play like he's on fire, lots of hustle. He's a gap-to-gap hitter, just like Cedric Mullins kind of is. And yeah, I mean, this is a really exciting guy. He can run down almost every ball in the outfield. He profiles as a natural center fielder. Mason Janvrin kind of is another company you can look at as another Oriole in the minor league system. But Gerard Dyson, you look at those kind of guys. that just have that blazing speed in the outfield. But this is extremely exciting to me. If his power, keeps being as good as it was in college as it is in the minor leagues, I think we're in for a really nice prospect here.
So I think we each wanted to give our own grade to each one of these non-drafted free agents. We'll start right back up at the top. What do you think about Ryan Watson in terms of a grade?
I'm going to be generous, and I'm going to give it a D+. I'm
Okay.
just not really too excited about this guy. I don't really see the raw stuff and the control coming together to make him a great pitcher. I hope he proves me wrong, but that's where I'll go for there.
Yeah, I embrace debate. I'm going to be, hopefully we never have this guy on the show. I have to face the music. I'm going to give the pick an F. I don't really see, besides the competition level, I don't really see him being the next big prospect in the Orioles system. Probably being a little bit too harsh on him, and we don't really know until these guys actually hit the field. But wasn't, this is my least favorite of the non-drafted guys. Wasn't a big fan.
Yeah, I agree with that. JD Mundy will move down to him. I'm going to go with a C. I think that's pretty fair for him. If that bat comes along from that left side, just becomes a really big power bat, I'm excited about him. Maybe like a JC Ascari you kind of look at as a comp a little bit in the Orioles system, where he's just a straight up power hitter who can hit for a little bit of average too. But I'll give it a C for right now.
Yep, that's what I gave it. C. All the points you just mentioned. I do like his slap ability though as a hitter, and left-handed power plays in Camden Yards. I mean, any kind of power plays in Camden Yards, but a C, kind of middle of the road pick. Don't hate the pick.
For Brandon Young, I'm going to give him an A+. I really do like this. I really think he should have gotten drafted. There's some people actually, I think someone called him one of the best pitchers in the country on Twitter that I saw. A scout said that. So that's really exciting. We'll see if that pans out, but I really do like this guy. Great stuff. Pretty nice control.
Yeah, I gave it an A-. Absolutely love the pick. He's a big guy. I like those big guys that are pitchers. Doesn't have to really work too hard to get the velocity. I think he might end up being the best out of the bunch. He's not my favorite pick, but he's probably number 2 or number 3.
I think I know who your favorite pick is, or at least one of them, but
let's
move on to Thomas Gerard.
Yep.
Let's move on to Thomas Gerard. I'm going to go with a C+ here.
Mm-hmm.
Another guy that I'm not a huge fan of drafting someone who's not a starting pitcher. So that's just always me. That's the way I think. So I'll give it a C+ for right now.
Yeah, actually, this is one of my favorite picks. I gave it a B+. I like pitchers that have a plus pitch, a plus secondary pitch, and his slider does look pretty wipeout. So they got Chris Holt in there. If he can teach him a changeup or another pitch, I think he's already got the slider on lockdown. I think he's going to be a really good piece moving forward.
Yeah, I got to be honest. I really have trust in the Orioles pitching development right now. I think it's some of the best in the league. You look at John Means turning himself into this ace
From
pitcher
nothing.
He really wasn't at all in the minors. I mean, he was never a coveted prospect, and he became an ace with that fastball and changeup combo. I have full trust that this is going to be a really, solid pitching development system. So, it's exciting to see all these guys go through there soon, like, Carter Balmer.
Yeah, John Means had never made a All-Star game ever in his career until he did with the Orioles. Not in the minor leagues, not in college. So, just shows you what they can do.
It's pretty shocking. I think Chris Holt has a lot of input on that, and he's been great.
Next guy we want to talk about is T.T. Bowens from Central Connecticut State. Shout out Danielle Marshall, who's the head basketball coach there. I actually gave this pick an A-. This was probably right with Brandon Young. This is my second or third favorite pick. They're probably tied for that. I like his frame. I like his versatility. I think he's going to be a real piece, and I think if they updated the top 30 Orioles prospect, I think he might have a chance to eke in that bottom half of the 20s.
To be honest, I just really love guys with size. I always, when I'm scouting guys, I look at their size, immediately, and I say, okay, this is a guy who can really use that size to produce a ton of home runs, and that's what really excites me about T.T. Bowens. I'm going to give it a B+. I really do like this. I just think there's so much potential there. You look at that bat, and it could come so far in the next few years and become a really, like I said, even a JC Ascari comp works there too.
And the next guy I want to talk about is my personal favorite of the NDFA class, and that would be Isaiah Kearns. Obviously, we already mentioned him, but I think the two-way ability and, the potential that he offers, he could fill into his frame a little bit more, maybe be the new Stevie Wilkerson, Dr. Poo-Poo, if needed,
Okay.
if he needs to be called upon. I gave this an A+, my favorite of the entire class.
Okay, well, I'm gonna give it a minus.
Okay.
I really like the two-way player. I think that he's a little undersized, but I do love the two-way player thing, and that's always exciting. There's so much of that happening right now in MLB. You look at a guy like Hunter Green and Brendan McKay and Shohei Ohtani, and there's just so much of that happening right now. That's exciting. But yeah, I do like his bat more, like I said. So I'm just excited to see how he progresses.
Yeah, and then the final guy we want to talk about is Dylan Harris. This is probably, right middle of the road, maybe a little bit on the lower end, but I gave it a B-. I like the power, but
Okay.
I think with our player comp with Cedric Mullins, I think we know by now with Cedric Mullins, it might be an all or nothing. He might be one of those really streaky hitters. When he's really on, and he's going to be a force in the lineup. And when he's not, he might get mired in a little bit of a hitless streak. So I think Dylan Harris, B-. I think that's a fair grade.
See, I was actually a big Cedric Ballins fan. I really still do like him. I have high hopes for him. Yep. I thought he was the center fielder of the future. So that comp really doesn't affect my grade too much. I'm going to give him an A. I just really like the possible gap-to-gap power, over-the-wall power as well. The speed is just exceptional. It's probably the best in class in the system. And I just think that, the defensive profile is so good. I'd like to see a little more on his arm. I don't really know how good his arm is yet, but I'm assuming it's pretty solid because he played center field in college. So I'm going to give that one an A.
Perfect. Anything else to wrap up the show, Zach, with either the restart or the NDFA class?
No, I mean, I just hope everything goes off as soundly as possible. I mean, it's obviously it's going to be a tough road, and for all sports really, and hope it all goes off as simply as possible. And we get basketball, we get football, we get baseball this year. It'd be really good.
Yep, I'm definitely rooting for a season, and especially rooting for it to be safe. Safe for the players, safe for the staff and the coaching staff as well. There's a lot of older coaches out there, so you got to be extra careful. But I think as long as they put these measures into place, I'm hoping and praying that there aren't, clusters or massive outbreaks. So,
yeah, for sure.
As always, subscribe on YouTube to our podcast. We appreciate all the new subscribers that we've gotten, all the new page views. And you know what? If you've been watching the show for a while, go tell a friend. It doesn't hurt to expand our reach and our audience a little bit. And thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you next week.